Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Catholic Table Talk Podcast. This is the podcast where everything Catholic is always on the table for discussion. Thank you again for joining me at the table this week. I'm your host, William Sauber. Really thankful that you spend part of your time with us. And when this episode is released, it's on Holy Thursday. You can listen to it during other times during the year, but its premiere is Holy Thursday of 2022. So hopefully your Holy Week is off to and is going a good week. No speakers today. I'm just by myself here, but I'd like to start off the show by saying thank you for everyone who listens and watches on YouTube and Facebook, as well as spreading the word about Catholic Table Talk podcast, spreading it. And if you have a show or a speaker request, please feel free to email Catholic Table Talk at catholictt@gmail.com. Again, that's catholictt@gmail.com, the official email of Catholic Table Talk podcast. So I got this cool idea, as you can see behind me. If you're watching this, I got all kinds of great Catholic books and Bibles and everything here at my Studio T. This book I have featured on the show before, and I thought I would kind of go over it. I would recommend getting this, especially, like I said, when this show premieres or just beginning over Let, and maybe you picked up Wing Catholic books for Let. If you have, or you like Wing Catholic books, I highly recommend getting this book. Gary Machuda did a class on this book, and I loved it, so I want to share it with you. It's as featured in episode 17, I believe, with Emma Wico's A History of the Church and 100 Objects by Mike Aquilina. There's his name, Mike Aquilina. So, lots of great reviews from the book. You find it on Amazon, really pretty cheap. Rodney Stark, the great author, even though he's Lutheran, but he's still very good. A fantastic, unique spiritual feast, Rodney Stark says. So hopefully you get Mike Aquilina on the show too. And I'll probably do more than one part. It's broken down to 7 parts. That might be a little long. But we'll see if for sure do 2, if not 3 parts. And these won't be back to back to back. These will be kind of spread out for the next few episodes. When there's no speaker along with me. So today we'll be reading kind of more of start of Christianity. The Church of the Apostles and Martyrs is the first part of the book that Mike breaks down into one of 7 parts. Part 2, we would talk about more later in the times of the Church and the Empire. So once again, 7 parts is broken down to throughout the years. And like I said, I don't think I'm going to do 7 parts, but for sure do 2 or 3. So bear with me. Like I said, I can probably get most of the words away, but probably mess up a little bit again. So we'll just kind of go through the introduction a little quick here. Mike says, it was Palm Sunday, and for what our family had arrived early for Mass. So early, in fact, that we saw our pastor as he was leaving the rectory. We exchanged our hellos and made a small talk. I marveled that the parking lot was already full on Palm Sunday. And then his pastor replied, everybody comes to church on Palm Sunday and Ash Wednesday. Why? Because it's the 2 days that they get free stuff. Catholicism is indeed the religion of stuff. Our churches of ashes and incense, icons and statues, bread and wine, water and oil, incorrupt bodies and bones encased in glass. None of this interdetrimental to the faith. We're not just about spiritual life, we're about the whole person. So matter matters too. To an amazing degree, matter makes the faith as we live it day to day. And he goes on to say, and it's always been this way. In the year AD 383, St. Gregory of Nyssa noted that all through the Old Testament, God has saved his people by means of stuff. Moses' rod was a hazel switch, common wood that any hands might cut and carry and use as they please before tossing it into the fire. But God proposed to work a miracle through that rod. Great miracles beyond the power of the words to express. See Exodus 4:14 for that. Likewise, a matter of one of the prophets. A simple goat skin made Elisha famous throughout the whole world. See 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 8. A bramble bush showed the presence of God to Moses. See Exodus chapter 3, verse 2. And the remains of Elisha raised a dead man to life. See Kings chapter 13, verse 21. The God of Jesus Christ is the God of Israel, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And it is his custom to get mixed up and it is his custom to get mixed up in the lives of history and of his people. So that's kind of an introduction of the book. Mike kind of goes on and kind of does more. But he says, let's see, since most people tend to think of history in eras, we have to divide the chapters of this book into 7 groups. So it's the Church and the Apostles, the Church of the Apostles and Martyrs, which we'll talk about a little bit through the day, the Church and the Empire, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, with the Renaissances and Reformations, the Age of Revolutions, and the Global Village. So today we'll talk about the Church and the Apostles. We're going to talk just kind of briefly over three objects. Now, if you get the book, you can, of course, read them too. But I think this book is so great. That's probably basically why I'm doing it. I'm kind of promoting the book because it's really short. It's about it's only about 125 pages long. Each object is only about a page long. So you can do it right before you go to bed. You can do it right before supper. You can even say it at the supper table or something. So it's a very good book. The Church of the Apostles and Martyrs. In the beginning, the church and individual believers needed to focus on very basic matters: how to survive persecution, how to distinguish Christianity from Greco-Roman religion and from Judaism, and how to respond to critics. By the end of the 4th century, the church already possessed the characteristics and seeds of the doctrines that define Catholicism today. Christian identity was strong and recognizable even to non-believers and persecutors. So, I mean, we talked about this on the show before, but Christian identity was strong and recognizable to everyone. So people think, where did Christian identity come from? No one ever believed it. Well, they believed it way back when it was non-believers and persecutors, which that's kind of why they have a persecutor, right? They don't persecute someone if they don't believe that he or she is a Christian, because otherwise, why are they probably persecuting them, right? Christians distinguish themselves by their moral lives, their single-minded devotion, and their charity. So the very first object we have is where, and maybe some of you have been here, the silver star in Bethlehem where Jesus was born. So again, I'll try not to read all of it, but I'll read some of it. The grotto of the Nativity lies beneath the altar in Bethlehem's Basilica of the Nativity. Christians affixed the star to the marble in 1717. In the sanctuary and half that followed, it was removed and replaced. And these actions uh, participated in the Crimean War in 1853. But the spot was well established long before the 18th century. The Gospels of Matthew and Luke assert that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. The Gospel of John then assumes that fact. The birth took near a feeding trough for animals. That's how the scriptural record tells us. The artifacts of history conform what we see in scripture and then hit that more. The earliest Christians took special care to remember the actual sites of the major events of the Savior's life. So you go to the start where Jesus was born. You probably you go to kind of the Jordan River where Jesus was baptized. Just the proclamation of the kingdom. There's a church there. The Transfiguration. There's a church there. So they took really special care and they remembered where what Jesus did in those special areas to remember that. Of the major light, of the Savior's life, his passion, but also his extraordinary birth. They learned of the sites when they could from eyewitnesses, possibly even from the Virgin Mary, who kept these things and pondered them in her heart. In Luke chapter 2, verse 19. Through chapter 51, they in their turn also kept these things in their hearts and pondered them. So they got the sites. If they didn't know, they got them from eyewitnesses. So basically, it's true if they ask eyewitnesses and they ponder them in their hearts. So that was about it for that one. Oh yeah, the Catholic faith is historical faith. Biblical religion situates itself in real times, real places, crowded with real people. So again, it is Catholic and foremost historical faith. It's the one true faith. I mean, you look at Lutherans. Why are they called Lutherans? Because Martin Luther started it. So it doesn't, to me, almost doesn't really sound true. I'm not whipping really Lutherans, but faith was made up from one guy who was God. So that's the Catholic faith. Catholic faith is started by Jesus Christ. Historical figures as well as the historian Cardinal Jean Daniel exhorted, the Bible is a record of evidence for certain events, certain historical works of God, and is a covenant with Abraham, the birth and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and Pentecost. So the Bible, if you read it, especially Bible in the Year with Father Mike Schmitz, is a record of evidence for these certain events. So, again, first object, we're just kind of getting started, but a very cool object is the birthplace, the silver star in Bethlehem. So we'll skip 2 and 3 just to kind of save time here. So of course, I'm just kind of doing my favorites from when I took Healing Matures class. I kind of got some favorites. This one I did not really realize, and I found really, really cool. It's called the wooden post by the sea in India. And Mike says, there's not much to it. It's a rough wooden post stuck in the ground near the seashore in the city of Sharia, India's southeastern coast. Until recently, the post didn't have a plaque or marker explaining its significance. So it just had a fence around it and a big long post sticking in the ground. People didn't know what it was for and what happened with it. but the locals knew, he said. According to the legend, on that site, St. Thomas the Apostle had thrust a wooden post into the ground and said, the sea will not come up so far. Well, the coastline has changed significantly since the 4th century when St. Thomas was around. And some of the places visited by St. Thomas are now underwater. But the sea has never, ever come up as high as the St. Thomas post. On the day after Christmas in 2004, just minutes after midnight, a great earthquake and tsunami struck the Indian Ocean. This is real life. This is 2004. If not, you should probably Google it and probably see it. Just minutes after midnight, a great earthquake and tsunami struck the Indian Ocean. Seismologists, I believe you say, that's what they're called, seismologists, say that at least energy equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima-type nuclear bombs. Thousands of people lost their lives, and many coastal cities were land waste. And I didn't know about this, but like I said, you should Google it if you don't know about it. Many Christians of the region, knowing that the floodwaters were coming soon, took refuge behind the William Thomas post, and they survived. The sea, according to local accounts, stopped short of the marker. And within days, the Indian bishop sent out a press release relating the incident. And soon afterwards, the locals in gratitude constructed a fence and shrine around the post, with a bronze plaque recording the miracle of the tsunami. There was no reliable data, 4th century evidence of the presence of the Apostle Thomas in India, but the tradition thereafter is strong. So basically, bam, that's a lot. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? I mean, 2004, people knew it was coming, and the waters did not go over or come really too close to the post. And like it says, at that time, there was no fence around it. There was just a post in the ground. But the locals, they knew it was from St. Thomas, and they believed that they believed him and when it come to the post, and they didn't. So I mean, I would love to go there because that's pretty. I mean, that's incredible. That's definitely a miracle. Just like if I guess we're in Minnesota, at least I am. So, if you say something about if a tornado didn't come through this certain pathway because the stick was here, well, if you knew a tornado was coming, you all one behind the post, right? So that's pretty incredible. So again, if you have not looked up that, I would say look it up. So anyway, let's see. Finishing up, an India bishop in the 20th century warned that anyone who voices a doubt about St. Thomas's presence in India should be ready to receive a sudden punch in the nose. That's hardly necessary, since St. Thomas himself was harbored greater doubts. His spiritual children are numerous today, and they believe and have found refuge in this tradition. So that's the end of St. Thomas wooden post in India. It's by the sea. Really recommend going there. So yeah, don't doubt what the saints said it would happen. Yeah, well, don't doubt that because it's probably true. So really cool stuff there. So keep this going. Hope to do about 3 to 5, so we'll see you on time. But number 5, there's 10 in each 7. There's about 10 to 15 in each section. So I want to kind of do about half of them each time. So this is the third one. This is object 5. It's the loaves and the fish. Now, most of you probably have known this one, but I'm going to do this again. It's a mosaic. This mosaic dating from the 5th century. Indoors, and the floor of the church of the multiplication in Tagafar, Israel. At the seats a basket of loaves and 2 fish, recalling Jesus' miracle feeding of thousands with just a few items. You find that in Matthew chapter 14, verse 17. There's an image there. The image is situated next to a large rock, which has been left in place in the floor since the first church was built there in the 4th century. The early Christians likely marked that rock as the place where Jesus stood or sat when he took the loaves, blessed and broke them, and gave them to his disciples for handing out. Yeah. So that's how, like I said, they recall what happened, where they happened, and they remember them, and they conform with eyewitnesses, and they planted them in their heart, and they made beautiful churches, beautiful mosaics, beautiful sites about it. And basically, Jesus, like the Last Supper, is kind of connection there. Jesus either stood, or I don't know, he could have sat like the Last Supper. He took the loaves, blessed, and broke them, and gave them to the people. Well, like the Last Supper, he blessed and broke the bread, and gave it to his disciples. This mosaic rests beneath the church's altar, because Christians have always seen the multiplication of loaves and fish as a foreshadowing of the Eucharist. As the iconologist Braden Snyder, an evangelical Protestant, put it, the fish was the bread, the primary symbol for the Eucharist, the meal that developed, maintained, and celebrated the new community of faith. Indeed, the Eucharist dominates the attention of early Christian authors. The only surviving Christian document is likely the Didache, whose rituals portions may date back to AD 48. That would predate the oldest portions of the New Testament. The Didache indicates folk texts as well as rubrics for the Eucharistic prayer and advice for making a good communion. It makes clear that communion may be received only by baptized believers. Other documents on the 4th and early 2nd century share a common concern for proper Eucharistic worship. The letter of Babas considers the Christian sacrifice in light of the liturgy of Jerusalem, of the Jerusalem temple, especially the rituals of the Day of Anointment. So don't want to go off too much here, but basically there's a mosaic near the altar at Tagafar, Israel, where, like I said, I believe that Jesus sat or stood and came out the loaves and the 2 fish that the boy had. Let's see. So again, I'm kind of going back to the blessing and breaking of the bread. Mike goes on, immediately after his resurrection, which was, of course, Easter Sunday, Jesus broke bread with 2 disciples and was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Luke chapter 24, verse 35. So basically, Easter Sunday, when he was resurrection, he walked with 2 of his disciples as they were walking out of Jerusalem, and he they went to a town. He sat down with them, and they didn't realize it was Jesus until he blessed and broke the bread and gave it to them again. Even after Pentecost, the church met for breaking of the bread and prayer in the prayers. St. Paul's more intense sermon, theologically important letters are concerned largely with table fellowship, which in that first generation met the Eucharist and the associated epigrat meal described in chapter 11 of 1 Corinthians. By the middle of the next century, the church had decisively separated the Eucharist from other meals, probably because of the very abuses described by St. Paul. The Mass described in the earliest church documents is structurally the same as the Mass celebrated in typical Catholic parishes today. When the Catechism of the Catholic Church appeared in 1992, its editors chose not to draft a new description of the Mass, but simply incorporating verbatim a passage from St. Justin Martyr, written in the middle of the second century, calling it the Mass of all ages. So, the Mass described in the earliest church documents is structurally the same as we celebrate Mass today. Which, if you think about it, that's true. Like Father Walkie at Weber says, Mass is in two liturgies. The liturgy of the Word is the first part, and then the liturgy of the Eucharist. And Jesus taught, he proclaimed the kingdom of God, he spoke the gospel, he was teaching people, and then he did hold the Last Supper, and now we have the Holy Eucharist, and it's still the same as when it was way back. So that's always another reason why the Catholic faith is also the true faith. So at least that's what I believe. So yeah, that's the five loaves. Excuse me, the loaves and the fish. Object number 5 in 100 objects. So I'll try and do one more quickly here. That one took a little longer, but there's so much. You can reflect and meditate on the stuff, and you probably just keep on meditating and finding new stuff. It's like the Bible. You can see more connections the more you read it, the more you meditate and pray on it. So definitely a good book to read. And like I said, Mike has gotten great reviews on this book. John Michael Tablet, a famous Catholic musician, has spoken great deal about it. Of course, Protestants have spoken a good deal on it. Who else? Yeah. So, but I said, hopefully get Mike on the show soon. So the last one we'll talk about today, folks, is the stones of the Jerusalem temple. These massive blocks, briefly on earth, was composed the walls of the Jerusalem temple. For Jews, the most sacred spot on earth. The Gospels tell of the amazement of Jesus' disciples as they first caught sight of those mighty stones. In Luke chapter 21, verse 5, and Jesus wept as he foresaw the destruction of the holy city. Luke chapter 19, verse 41. Today, those hewn stones are held to a skeletal pile of colossal rubble. So just piled up big, large stones that looks, for most people, if you just walk past them, you might just think they're regular stones on the ground. Rubble with individual blocks rising as high as a man's hip. In the year AD 70, after 4 years of the bloody Jewish rebellion, the Roman military leveled the city. The day came as Jesus had predicted, when there shall not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. He said that in Luke chapter 21, verse 6. The Romans wanted to prevent such a war from erupting again. and their efforts began with a shore of owl that was sacred to the Jews. On the Temple Mount, they built a temple to the Roman god named Jupiter. They expelled out Jews from Jerusalem and the nearby territory, enslaving many of them for labor in the capital. There were few, if any, Christians among those captive and exiled, exiled Jews. The ancient uh, historians say that the fathers of the way received a vital prophecy shortly after before Jerusalem's destruction, and they withdrew to Pella, one of the 10 cities built by the Romans in the Jordan Valley. Already at Jerusalem's conquest, there seems to have been a parting of the ways. In the Acts of the Apostles, the first Christians clearly saw themselves as co-reliant cornerstones with the Jews. Paul identifies himself as an Israelite, a Benjamite, a Jew, and a Pharisee. And outside saw the Jewish Christian argument as dispute between rival sects, sects, S-E-C-T-S. And that's in Acts chapter 23, verse 29. A running argument about a sacred text that both parties held in common. So, large stones that were walls of Jerusalem's temple, like I said, goes up to a man's normal sized man's hip. That's how high they are. Very heavy, as you can imagine, I'm sure. Very, very heavy. But yeah, so it's still there. Let's see. So wait a little bit more here. At what moment did Christianity become something other than a variety of Judaism, like the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and Nicolaitans? Each of these variations was granted some measure of legitimacy by the others. When did Al begin to recognize Christianity as something else? When did Christianity become to see itself that way? The question of the parting ways is a vast field of study, partly contested by scholars. At some point, both parties must have recognized that the differences were not intellectual but essential and defined. Those who argue for an early separation point to the persecution of the way by the authorities in Jerusalem. The Sadducees, which why they called the Sadducees, because they don't believe in the resurrection. That's why they called the Sadducees. Thank you, Father, give your words for pointing that out to me. Very helpful to, first of all, pronounce it, but then know what they believed in. So the Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection. If I'm wrong, Father Gabriel, please correct me. But they didn't believe in the resurrection, so they are called Sadducees. Pretty nifty like that. The Sadducees and the Essenes had serious differences, but they didn't resort to killing one another. The early advocates note also that the apostles of the Council of Jerusalem chose to set aside the Torah ceremonial law. Thus, each party seems to have rejected the other almost from the first moment of their contracts. So they didn't really like one another, and yeah, so lots of different opinions of the different religions back then, different groups back in that time. So I guess let's get back to the discussion of the temple in the last few moments here. The discussion destruction of the temple, creating a crisis for everyone who identified with the religion of Israel. Judaism in the first half of the fourth century was a sexually significant sacrificial religion, and sacrifice could be offered only in the Jerusalem temple. Only in the Jerusalem temple. Our prayer was oriented in the direction of the Temple Mount. From the rubble of destruction, a new Judaism arose. Yeah, a couple big words in here, probably can't pronounce. It is Arabic Judaism, a non-priestly, non-sacrificial movement that grew from the methods and piety of the Pharisees, a lay movement. So a new movement came, Componenus, I could be saying that well, but with early Christianity. So it is Arabic Judaism. So a new kind of movement, Judaism occurred. Jews and Christians emerged like siblings from the same historical circumstances, and they have often fought like siblings. And yet, Jews and Christians have gone forward in history together. Sounds kind of familiar, does it? Like Jesus was a Jew. We get lots of our traditions, whatever. It's kind of from Judaism. You know, we have the Jews and us have a lot and kind of, should I say, common, and stuff that started kind of came from Jews. So basically right here, Mike points out Jews and Christians have gone together in history since the church first began. Each necessary, it seems, from the other's self-understanding. The stones may be scattered in Jerusalem, and so we can no longer meet on the porticos of the temple, but our traditions and our destinies are intertwined into a wind. So yeah, we kind of mesh a little bit, Mike points out in his book. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention he did it with his daughter too. So his daughter and him did this. Great book, recommend it. A History of the Church of 100 Objects. Great reading, I said, before bedtime, before supper, during supper, whatever the case might be. So amazing. We'll have a couple more parts to it. I took enough of your time. Hopefully you learned something. And hopefully move out to buy it. The links to buy it are down below in the chat. And like I said, I'll have more than one part. It will be scattered from the next few episodes. Like I said, it just depends on if I have a speaker or not. If I have a speaker, it won't be it. So next time I don't have a speaker, I'll make part 2. So hopefully part 2 is better than the first one, but we always try to do our best. So thank you again for listening. Have a fantastic week, everyone. God bless you. God willing, we'll see you right here again at the table, hopefully with a speaker, at Catholic Table Talk Podcast. It's the podcast where everything Catholic is on the table.